Welcome. Tonight's story is shared in a gentle voice. Take a deep breath, and let's begin. Hi. My name is Chloe. I'm 26 now, but I was 17 when I realized I wasn't the daughter my parents wanted to save. It wasn't a sudden moment. It was slow. Like a drip. A steady erosion. But the memory that haunts me most came on a cold Wednesday morning, when I woke up in a hospital bed alone. My mouth was dry, my chest ached, there was a monitor beeping slowly beside me, and no one. No one from my family was there. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not even my sister, Emily, the one they said deserved the world. The last thing I remembered was collapsing on the gym floor during PE. I had been pushing through the dizziness for weeks, assuming I was just tired. Overworked. Stressed. But that day my legs gave out, and I remember hearing someone scream before everything went dark. They said I was lucky to survive. Severe anemia, organ strain, undiagnosed autoimmune issues. The doctor told me someone brought me in, a coach I think, but that the hospital had been trying to reach my parents for hours with no success. And when they finally showed up, almost 10 hours later, they weren't crying or panicked. My mom was on the phone, arguing about a college payment, and my dad was asking the nurse how much longer I'd need the room. They didn't even look at me. And when they finally did, they smiled like they were visiting a neighbor, not their daughter on a hospital bed. "We're just under a lot of pressure right now," my mom said, brushing my hair off my forehead. Emily's financial aid fell through, and we had to make a decision. We couldn't leave her without a future, Chloe. She's worked so hard. I remember staring at her, lips cracked, skin pale, heart pounding with disbelief. "So you left me here?" I asked. My voice barely came out. She didn't answer. She just kissed my forehead and told me to rest. Emily, of course, was already gone. Accepted into some prestigious East Coast school. She had a dorm, a full wardrobe, a meal plan, a new laptop. Everything I didn't. And the night before I collapsed, I had overheard my parents whispering about loans, credit cards, and how Chloe's just always been resilient. That word stuck with me. Resilient. Like I was made to be ignored. To bounce back from being discarded. When I was discharged, there was no celebration. No welcome home. No bedroom waiting. Emily had taken it, my room, my desk, my mirror. I was moved to the basement. My things in boxes. A cot in the corner. "It's just temporary," my dad said. "Until things settle." But nothing settled. I became a ghost in my own house. Meals were cooked for 3. I washed my own sheets. I drove myself to follow-up appointments using a neighbor's borrowed car. No one even asked how I felt. And when Emily came home for the holidays, she brought stories of college life, fancy brunches, new friends. My parents beamed at her like she hung the stars. One night, I was in the basement with a blanket wrapped around me when I heard them laughing upstairs, a warm, echoing laugh I hadn't heard in years. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just forgotten. I had been replaced. Quietly. Strategically. My survival had been inconvenient. And I was beginning to understand that if I had died that day in gym class, they would have mourned, yes. But they would have also saved a lot of money. And Emily would have had her future handed to her without a single obstacle. That realization? It broke something in me. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But deeply. Quietly. Irreversibly. And from that moment on, I stopped waiting to be chosen by people who had already written me off. I started keeping to myself. I stopped asking for anything. If I needed meds, I found the cheapest way to get them. If I had to eat, I'd wait until everyone left and heat up leftovers, pretending I wasn't hungry. My parents were always busy, too busy to drive me to therapy, too busy to check on my health, too busy managing Emily's new life. I watched my mom spend hours on the phone with her, talking about dorm drama and professors. Once, I was upstairs for water and heard her say, "No, don't worry about Chloe. She's always been low maintenance." And I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. Because what she called low maintenance was just neglect dressed up in a compliment. I wasn't strong. I was invisible. The only time they really looked at me was when I messed up. Like the day I forgot to unplug the iron and left a faint scorch on the towel. My dad's face twisted like I'd ruined his life. "Do you know how much we've sacrificed?" he shouted. "Do you think we can afford to replace things right now?" I didn't say anything. I didn't remind him that the towel had been mine, a gift from my aunt before she moved. I just nodded. And cleaned the mark until my fingers bled. That night I bled through my sheets. My condition had flared again, but I didn't say a word. I washed everything in secret, stayed quiet through the pain. Because now I knew, if I made noise, I was a burden. If I got sick again, they'd see it as me stealing from Emily. That's what everything had become, a balance sheet. Emily's tuition, Emily's books, Emily's future, and my quiet, unacknowledged suffering that kept it all affordable. And the worst part? I started believing them. I started thinking maybe I was less valuable. Maybe I had failed to become the kind of daughter worth saving. I didn't even have a dream school. Or medals. Or awards. Just a high school attendance certificate and a thick folder of unpaid medical bills. Bills I wasn't allowed to talk about. "We're managing," my mom would say through clenched teeth when they came in. "You don't need to worry." But I did. I worried every time I heard whispers about interest rates or collection calls. I worried because I knew, deep down, that every dollar spent on me was a reason to resent me more. And that resentment? It sat in the air like mildew. You couldn't see it. But it poisoned everything. There was one night I'll never forget. It was late, maybe 1 or 2 a.m., and I was sitting on the cold basement floor, trying to press a heating pad to my stomach while keeping my breathing steady. The cramps were sharp, unforgiving, and I knew I needed help. But I didn't call out. I didn't even move. Because I could hear my parents upstairs, laughing at something Emily had sent. A voice message, I think. My dad played it twice. My mom was crying from laughing so hard. And in that moment, the ache in my gut wasn't just physical, it was everything I'd swallowed for years trying not to scream. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, "You're not their daughter anymore. You're just the leftover." After that night, I started planning my exit. Quietly. Methodically. I knew I couldn't afford college. I didn't have scholarships. I didn't have support. But I had skills. I had a brain. And more. Importantly, I had time, because no one was watching me. So I got a job cleaning offices on the weekends. My parents didn't notice. They thought I was in bed or maybe out for walks. I saved every penny in an envelope I kept hidden inside an old cereal box. When I got sick again, I went to the clinic alone. Paid in cash. Got my own prescriptions. I learned how to hide the worst days and fake normalcy through the rest. And when I turned 18, I left. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a scene. I packed what little I had into a backpack and left a single note, "Thanks for making it so easy to go." I stayed on a friend's couch for a few weeks, then moved into a shared room above a laundromat where I slept with a fan blowing to drown out the noise. I took night shifts, studied online during the day, and when I finally saved enough for a community college class, I cried on the bus ride home because it was mine. I had done it without them. Without their money. Without their concern. Without their help. Every little step I took away from that house felt like stitching myself back together. Slowly. Painfully. Imperfectly. But I was no longer surviving for scraps. I was building something of my own. Still, there were nights I hated how much I missed them. How my heart still flinched at the sound of someone calling their daughter. How I still wished, deep down, that they'd call and say they were wrong. That they missed me. That they saw me now. But those calls never came. Instead, one day, I got a message from Emily. A picture of her with my parents at her graduation. My mom was holding flowers. My dad had his arm around her. And Emily? She was beaming. No caption. No words. Just the photo. Like she wanted me to know they were doing just fine without me. I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. And that night, I went to work, brewed coffee for strangers, and told myself that family is not mine anymore. I don't owe them grief. I don't owe them guilt. And I definitely don't owe them my silence. Because the truth is, I didn't survive despite them, I survived because I stopped waiting for them to care. I built a life out of everything they left behind. And maybe they still think I was just a mistake. A burden. A delay in Emily's golden path. But I've made peace with that. Because while they were investing in her future, I was busy reclaiming mine. But when your family chooses to forget you, sometimes the only way to survive is to forget them first. In the next part, Chloe starts to rebuild her life, piece by piece, but not everyone is ready to let her go that easily. Part 2, I sent their invitation back with a note, thanks. I'll be busy. It's strange how healing doesn't feel like a triumph at first. It feels like quiet, like long silences in cheap apartments, like grocery store dinners for one, like walking home in the rain without anyone asking where you've been. That's how the first year away felt. I got used to it. The quiet. The independence. The loneliness that wrapped around me like a second skin. I kept my head down, worked long hours, took classes online, and pretended I didn't flinch when people talked about family. No one knew about Emily or the hospital or the basement. To them, I was just Chloe, the girl who worked late and never talked about holidays. I liked it that way. Clean. Simple. But the past doesn't always stay where you leave it. I found that out the day I walked into the coffee shop after my shift and saw my mother sitting at a table near the window. She was holding a gift bag. Pink with white tissue, and beside her sat a girl I didn't recognize. Younger. Blonde. Laughing. At first I thought maybe she didn't see me. I tried to slip past. But then her eyes met mine and everything in her face froze. Just for a second. Just long enough. Chloe, she said like she wasn't sure. Like I was a ghost she had to name aloud to make disappear. I didn't answer. I just nodded, placed my order, and stood to the side like she was any other customer. I could feel her watching me. Could feel her fingers twitch like she wanted to reach out. But she didn't. And I didn't offer anything. When I got my drink and turned to leave, I heard her say softly, "You look well." I almost laughed. I didn't. I just kept walking. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling in my shared room, the fan spinning above me like a slow metronome to my thoughts. Why was she there? Why now? And who was that girl? The next week it happened again, not her, but Emily this time. I saw her name pop up on social media. A tagged photo. She was at a fundraiser gala, smiling with a group of people in cocktail dresses. One of them had captioned it, "Proud to support our keynote speaker, Emily Bennett." My chest clenched. She was doing well. Of course she was. But something about seeing it confirmed stung more than I expected. The next day, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note from my father. Short. Awkward. "Your mother saw you. Said you looked strong. We're glad. We think of you. Hope you're happy." That was it. No apology. No invitation. Just a quiet tap. On the door they had slammed shut years ago. I threw it away. Then pulled it out of the trash an hour later and read it again. Over and over. Trying to find something in it that felt like care. It wasn't there. What was there was guilt. And I started to realize they didn't miss me. They missed their chance to rewrite the story. To tell people, oh, Chloe? She's just private now. She needed space. But I hadn't taken space. I had been exiled. Forgotten. Buried under someone else's bright future. And now that future had a shadow, me, walking around, still alive, still visible. That made me dangerous. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I remembered the truth. And people like them? They need the truth to stay buried. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't answer the silent invitation to reopen old wounds. But ignoring the past doesn't mean it stays quiet. A few weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my aunt, the only one in the family who'd ever shown me any softness. Her voice cracked as she said, Chloe. I know we haven't talked. But your sister's engagement party is next month. They asked me to call. Said you might not listen if it came from them. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, holding my phone like it was something dangerous. An invitation? After all this time? My first instinct was to delete it. But a voice in me, that wounded part that still wanted to be seen, kept whispering, what if they finally realized what they did? What if they've changed? So I didn't delete it. I didn't say yes either. I just carried the weight of that voicemail around for days, like a stone in my chest. Then one afternoon I came home from class and found an envelope slid under my door. No stamp. No handwriting. Just a simple invitation card inside, you are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Emily Bennett and Tyler James. Hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. There was no personal note. No, we hope you'll come. Just the same stiff wording they would have sent to any distant guest. I stared at my name on the envelope and realized they didn't invite me, they invited the idea of me. A quiet, pretty older sister who'd show up in a dress and smile for the photos. Someone who wouldn't make a scene. Someone who'd keep the illusion intact. And for a moment, I almost gave it to them. I almost said yes. I pictured myself walking in, looking composed, letting them believe I had moved on. That they hadn't destroyed something that could never be rebuilt. But then I remembered the basement. The cot. The way I'd clutched my stomach in the dark. Trying not to cry too loud. The way my dad asked the nurse how long I needed the hospital bed, like it was a reservation at a hotel. I remembered everything. And it burned too deep for me to pretend. Still. I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't want revenge. But I wanted them to see. To feel the cost of what they'd done, not through yelling, not through drama, but through something much colder. So I put the card back in the envelope, added a post-it with 4 words, thanks. I'll be busy. And I mailed it. No return address. No explanation. Just a polite refusal from the girl they never thought would have the strength to say no. 2 days later, I got a message from Emily. Not a call. Just a photo. A picture of the dress she'd chosen, white with pearl details. She wrote, wish you could see this in person. No apology. No warmth. Just a soft guilt knife, slipped in like she was still the golden daughter and I was supposed to feel grateful for the scraps of her joy. I didn't reply. I just closed the message, deleted her number, and sat in silence. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. Because what they never understood was that walking away wasn't weakness. Staying quiet wasn't surrender. It was survival. And now. Now it was clarity. Clean. Final. Unapologetic, though I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the silence I gave them would finally be enough. But the thing about people who've rewritten history is they can't stand loose ends. A week before the engagement party, my boss handed me an envelope at the front desk. "Someone dropped this off for you," he said. No name. Just my first name written in black ink. Inside was a photo. Me, sitting on a bench outside the campus library, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. The back of the photo had a message: "You don't have to be alone. We still love you. Come see us." No signature. No address. But I knew it was them. I felt sick. I had never told them where I worked. Never told anyone outside my small circle where I went to school. And now they were watching. Not reaching out. Not calling. Watching. I stood in the staff room gripping that photo, shaking. I wasn't scared, not exactly. It was something colder than fear. A violation. A reminder that they still thought they had access to me. That love could be written like a threat. I didn't go to work the next day. I sat in my room staring at the photo for hours, trying to understand what they wanted. An apology? Closure? Forgiveness? Or did they just want the satisfaction of knowing I'd never fully escape them? That even now, years later, I still couldn't breathe without checking over my shoulder. And maybe they were right. Because I didn't feel free, I felt cornered. I felt like a prisoner in a story I didn't write. And so I made a decision. I got up. I got dressed. And I went to the engagement party. Not to celebrate. Not to reunite. But to end it. On my terms. I showed up an hour late, walked in through the back, and watched from the edge of the garden. As they laughed under string lights and clinked champagne glasses like nothing had ever gone wrong. Emily stood in the center, glowing. My parents beside her, proud and polished. I stood behind a tree, unseen, for a long time. Then I stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Faces turned. Conversations dropped. And the silence that followed was heavier than any scream I'd ever wanted to let out. My father opened his mouth first. "Chloe," but I raised my hand. Just once. I looked at my mother. Then at Emily. Then back to my father. And I said, clear, calm, and just loud enough for the whole gathering to hear, "You left me. I survived. Without you. And I'm not here to belong. I'm here to say goodbye." Then I turned and walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just final. Because that night wasn't about burning bridges. It was about closing the door they kept propped open for their own comfort. And as I walked through the parking lot alone, the night air cold against my skin, I felt it, not triumph, not relief, but peace. Small. Quiet. Earned. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't need them to admit what they did. I didn't need them to change the past. I had changed the ending. And that was enough. They wanted her to play along. To smile. To make their version of the story feel real. But she chose silence over performance, and distance over false peace. In the next part, Chloe finally steps into a life of her own. Until an unexpected voice from the past forces her to ask, did she really leave it all behind? Part 3, I looked her in the eyes and said, "You'll get through this." But I already did. I didn't expect to hear from them again. Not after the party. Not after what I said. I thought maybe, finally, they would let go, let me disappear into the version of life I'd built alone, quiet, whole. But that's the thing about people. Who once held power over you, they don't always know when to stop reaching. The message came on a Tuesday, buried in my inbox between job alerts and student loan updates. It was from an old email I didn't recognize at first. The subject line just said, "You should know." The message was only a few lines. No greeting. Just a statement. Emily has been diagnosed. Stage 2. They're all a mess. Thought you should know. Do what you want with that. That was it. No signature. No emotion. Just information, tossed at me like a live wire. I read it 4 times. Then I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just froze. Because even after everything, my first reflex was guilt. Not concern. Not grief. Guilt. Like maybe I was being tested. Like maybe this was the universe's way of asking, what kind of sister are you really? I closed my laptop. I went for a walk. I ignored the pounding in my chest and tried to focus on the cold wind on my face, the cracks in the sidewalk, the distant sounds of someone's dog barking. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tell a soul. For 2 days, I said nothing. Not because I didn't care. But because I didn't know what caring was supposed to look like anymore. When someone's hurt you deeply, quietly, persistently. And then life hurts them back, what are you supposed to do? Show up? Send flowers? Forgive? Forget? I didn't know. And no one teaches you how to hold both pain and compassion at the same time. On the 3rd day, I pulled out the photo they'd mailed me months ago, the one of me on the bench. I stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped it over. The message on the back, "You don't have to be alone," felt different now. I wasn't alone. I had made a life. A home. A version of myself they didn't know. But the loneliness was still there, like an echo. I hated that part of me still longed for something kind from them. A real apology. A real acknowledgement. Something they'd never given and probably never would. That weekend I called my aunt. She was quiet when she answered. "I was wondering if you'd call," she said softly. I asked if it was true. About Emily. She said yes. That she was in treatment. That she was scared. That she asked about me. I didn't ask what she said. I didn't want to know. But my aunt said something before we hung up that stuck with me. "You don't owe them your heart, Chloe. But you're allowed to feel it break anyway." And it did. Quietly. Unexpectedly. In a way I didn't see coming. A week later I found myself outside the hospital. I wasn't sure how I got there. I told myself I was just walking, just clearing my head, but somehow my steps led me to the place where people waited for answers and feared what came next. I didn't go inside. I sat on a bench across the street and watched people come and go, each of them holding something I didn't take: connection, purpose, maybe forgiveness. I tried to imagine what I'd say if I saw her. Emily. The sister who took everything and still somehow managed to haunt. What was left? I thought maybe I'd feel stronger, standing there. Like the past couldn't reach me anymore. But it did. It always did. I remembered the sound of her laughter upstairs while I lay in the basement with a fever. I remembered her texting our parents for more shampoo while I was coughing up blood in the clinic hallway. I remembered it all, and still, some twisted part of me wondered if she remembered any of it too. Did she even know the cost of her golden life? Did she ever sit with the silence she left me in? I sat there for almost 2 hours before walking away. I didn't cross the street. Didn't go inside. I just watched the doors, half hoping she'd come out, half terrified she would. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about my aunt's voice, her careful tone, the way she said, "You're allowed to feel it break anyway." I realized that's what grief looks like when the person you're grieving never truly loved you back. It's not clean. It's not noble. It's not the kind you get sympathy cards for. It's a private war between who you were and who you refuse to be again. So I wrote her a letter. Not to send. Just for me. I wrote everything I never said. Every memory. Every pain. Every apology I wanted but never got. I told her I hated her. I told her I missed her. I told her I didn't know which feeling would win. And when I was done, I folded it, tucked it into the back of an old notebook, and let it stay there, not because it healed anything, but because some things deserve to be acknowledged, even if no one ever hears them. It took me another month before I decided to visit her. Not to reconnect. Not to forgive. Just to see for myself if the girl who took everything from me still looked like someone I used to love. The hospital was colder than I remembered. I walked past rows of white walls, the faint scent of antiseptic pulling memories out of my body. Like a current I couldn't fight. When I found her room, the door was cracked open. I stood outside for a long time, watching her through the gap. She was thinner. Paler. Her hair pulled back in a messy braid, dark circles under her eyes. She was reading something on her phone, scrolling slowly, the way people do when they're not really looking, just trying to distract themselves from the quiet. I didn't knock. I didn't walk in. I just stood there, feeling the weight of 17 years of silence, of birthdays missed, of apologies never spoken. And as I turned to leave, I heard her say my name. Quiet. Shaky. Chloe? I froze. She'd seen me. Our eyes met. And for a moment, neither of us said a word. Then she whispered, "You look different." I almost laughed. I looked different because I was different. I was someone she never got to know. Someone her betrayal helped shape. I walked in slowly, hands in my coat pockets. I didn't sit. I didn't touch her. I just said, "I heard about your diagnosis." She nodded. Her eyes were already glassy. "I didn't know how to reach you." I didn't answer. I didn't say, "You didn't try when it mattered." She looked down at her hands, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. "I was awful to you. I don't even know why. Maybe I was jealous. Maybe I thought you'd always be there." I stared at her. At the girl who had taken my room, my parents, my place in the world like it was owed to her. And suddenly I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Not the kind that forgives. The kind that recognizes how small someone really is behind all the brightness. I said, "You weren't jealous. You were entitled. And they let you be." Her face broke. Tears spilled. But I didn't rush to her. I didn't offer comfort. That wasn't why I was there. I pulled a small envelope from my pocket. The same one they'd sent to me months ago, the party invitation, still folded, with my note inside. I placed it on her tray table. I kept it. Thought maybe one day I'd give it back. She reached for it, her hands shaking. I watched her open it, unfold the sticky note that said thanks. "I'll be busy." She laughed, and it cracked right down the middle. "I deserved this," she whispered. "I know." I turned to leave. And just before I stepped out, I said one last thing, not for her, but for me. "You'll get through this. Or you won't. But either way." I already did. And then I walked out. Down the sterile hallway. Past the nurse's station. Out. Into the cold air that wrapped around me like freedom. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Because the real ending wasn't what happened in that room, it was everything I survived to get there. And I finally knew the truth, I wasn't left behind. I was spared. And I wasn't broken. I was finally whole. She didn't need an apology to move on. She didn't need a perfect ending. What Chloe needed, and finally claimed, was her power to walk away and live life on her own terms. Not as a daughter forgotten, or a sister left behind, but as a woman who learned that healing isn't about who comes back. It's about who you become when no one else does. Thank you for watching her story. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is leave.